I say these things while I am still in the world, so that they may have the full measure of my joy within them. John chapter 17, verse 13. Joy. What is it? It's a little word, only 3 letters, but it has huge meaning. The dictionary definition says that it is vivid emotion of pleasure, gladness, happiness. What gives you joy? There are as many answers to that question as there are people on the planet. The answers can be complicated or simple. A hug, the completion of a job well done, a smile, your favourite music, and so on. For many people, this last 15 months has been really difficult, and joy has been hard to find. We've been waiting. I can't wait for tomorrow when government restrictions will be eased and we shall be able to socialise in restaurants, theatres and other people's homes. And what a joy it will be when the restrictions are lifted completely. In the meantime, we have to trust one another to do the right thing. To follow on from Nigel's sermon of last week, we have to love one another and think of what is good for everyone. In our reading from Acts this morning, we find the disciples waiting. They have had a traumatic time. They've witnessed the cruel death, mind-blowing resurrection and awe-inspiring ascension of their friend and master. They must have felt bewildered and apprehensive and lost, a long way from feeling joy. And many of them had fled. But Jesus had told them to wait for the Holy Spirit, and 120 of them did. They did not just wait passively. They began to get organised, and the first thing they did was to elect a new member of the 12, someone to replace Judas. They prayed for God's guidance to choose the right person, and with the help of the Holy Spirit, Matthias was selected. The disciples' belief and trust in Jesus was such that they had the confidence to wait, even though at times it must have been extremely hard. They remembered all that Jesus had taught them, and that before he left them, he had prayed for their protection. The Gospel reading from John today is the prayer Jesus prayed after the Last Supper. This prayer is sometimes known as the High Priestly Prayer or the Farewell Prayer, and it is the longest of Jesus' recorded prayers. It's a very personal prayer to God. Jesus knew that he was about to die, and he was concerned for his friends. He wanted to prepare them for the future. Jesus asked God to protect the disciples. Protect them by the power of your name, the name you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. Jesus wanted the disciples to be united, working together in harmony and love, just as the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are united as one. Jesus knew that they would have to face fear, pain, and rejection. However, in his prayer, Jesus did not ask for any of these horrors to be removed from them, but he did ask that their belief in him be protected. He knew that faith was necessary for the disciples to become increasingly aware of God and God's love. As followers of Christ, we reveal God's character to the world, just as the early disciples did. And Jesus' prayer for protection is for us as well. There are dangers, and we do need protection from our own weaknesses and against evil, the dark forces, those aspects of life which are not of God, which can divert or tempt us away from God's grace. Jesus had no doubt about the quality of those he called to follow him, then and now. We are gifted just as the early disciples were. Of course, we have our doubts. We struggle with questions of faith. But this is part of the gift to God that we persevere in spite of difficulty. If Jesus has confidence in us, then we should have confidence in ourselves and each other. We are a force for tremendous good in the world. In our families and communities, in great acts of generosity or simple acts of kindness, we make the presence of God felt. The events of the past 15 months have shown us how being God's hands, feet, and ears in this world makes such an impact. Under the protection of Christ, we become confident disciples, sanctified and consecrated in the truth, and ready to spread His word by our living out the example of His love. Knowing that we are loved and protected by God is a reason to be joyful. When we are tested and doubt ourselves, we must remember Jesus' prayer is for us, that we might have the full measure of His joy, and that joy is the very special close relationship with Jesus. And as Christians, we have the hope and expectation, the promise that that joy shall go on forever.